Andreas has a plan, and this plan involves Marcy. But how will this plan unfold, and why? Let's investigate. From Andreas' chessboard, we know that Marcy is a major player in his scheme, which is consistent with how we see him interact toward her at the end of A Day at the Aquarium, in which he makes a proposition to her. This proposition is going to be the most important thing in Season 2. This is why A Day at the Aquarium was the end of Season 2A. That is a monumental decision to choose to end your half of a season on an episode like this. One that's not a big climactic battle or anything like that. And it does not end on this episode because of Anne and her decision to go back to Wardwood. That's really not that big of a deal. She spends only a couple episodes in Wardwood before heading off to challenge the First Temple, and though we keep coming back to Wardwood a couple times in Season 2B, it is not nearly enough of a focus to have it be the main point of ending the season on an episode like this, to just have her go back to Wardwood. No, it's not about her. It is about Marcy. Marcy has just seen Anne leave her for a bunch of frogs that she's known for a couple months. This has got to be a little bit humiliating for her, especially since Marcy is not the most confident person in the world. And certainly her experiences back home, where she was characterized as just a silly nerd, did not give her reason to be confident. There's a real similarity between Anne choosing the Planters here and her choosing the Planters over Sasha. Sasha's reaction is, of course, extreme, especially when she tries to kill the Planters out of anger at the end of Season 1, but to a certain extent, her response is understandable, even if we don't agree with it. This is a person who has seen her best friend, the person she probably cares about the most in the world, choose a bunch of frogs over her, even though she has been struggling for months in this unfamiliar world, taking on all sorts of challenges and hardships just to get back to Anne. To have Anne not choose her like this, it probably feels to her like a betrayal. And while Marcy would not express those feelings of betrayal in the same way, as she's much more quiet and reserved and conflict averse, there's reason to believe those feelings still exist, and they leave her vulnerable to King Andreas' manipulations. She's lonely, and King Andreas exploits that. But to what end? We know King Andreas is serving his Bugmaster, but okay, so what? What does the Bugmaster want? Andreas mentioned stopping the prophecy, but we do not have a lot of information regarding what this prophecy is or what stopping it would actually entail. It most likely relates to the heroes of yore who defeated the monster in the past. Also, we know about Andreas's old friends, including Beryl, he of the Warhammer fame. Andreas stopped being friends and allies with these people. Why? And how did they factor into the prophecy? I am willing to bet that there is going to be a parallel between Andreas and his friends, to the extent that we learn about them, and our main trio of Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. It could resemble a little what Gravity Falls does, with Dipper and Mabel and Stanley and Stan Ford. It's worth noting that Matt Brawley, the showrunner of Amphibia, was a young storyboard artist on Gravity Falls, and he even did a lot of really great work directing the episode Northwest Mansion Noir, one of my personal favorite episodes of Gravity Falls. Stan Lee and Stanford were very close, like Dipper and Mabel were, but then they had a big falling out. And near the end of the series, the show gives us a little reason to believe that Dipper and Mabel might also have a falling out. Thankfully, that doesn't happen, but the stakes are raised because Stanley and Stanford are a cautionary tale for what could have been. And that's the same with Andreas' trio and Sasha and Marcy. Now, it's tempting to think that Sasha could play the Andreas role of being the person who ends up betraying those she cares about for her own selfish ambitions, but that's not really who Sasha is. Like, whatever else she is, whatever other problems she has, Sasha cares about her friends more than anything. And she's been learning and growing a lot as the seasons have progressed. And also, Andreas, from what we've seen of him, does tend to be this more intellectual sort, this more bookish sort. He resembles Marcy a lot. Take from that what you will. Now, how the prophecy will relate to King Andreas' plans to manipulate Marcy, I think that's pretty straightforward. He wants the box. What does he want it for? Probably something related to his Bugmaster. We don't know exactly what yet, but his plan involves getting the box for himself and using Marcy to do so. What then exactly was his proposal to Marcy? Was he lying? A lot of fans think so, but I don't. I think that would be a much less interesting way to take it than if he really is being sincere. Now, obviously, he has not told Marcy about everything. I highly doubt he has told her about the big bug creature, but he has probably told her the basics, as in, you are going to get me the box, so instead of you and your friends going home with it, like you don't want, you and your friends will get the chance to stay in Amphibia. Now, based on how sweet Marcy can be, it's tempting to view her as nothing more than an innocent victim, and to think that she could only cause harm to Anne if she was an unwitting pawn. But I find that attitude extremely patronizing. I like Marcy as a character. I think she has a lot of potential, which is why I want her to have a role in stopping the trio from returning home. It would make me more fully invested in her as a person. I cannot say at all that I like this tendency toward idealizing characters who are just so perfect and so lovable, and who only have these very minor and superficial flaws. Characters like those bore me to tears. I'm not asking for everyone to be grimdark and cynical, and I don't want that either. I'm just asking for people to act like real people in these shows, and not idealized conceptions of people. Anne fits that description. Sasha definitely does. If Marcy ends up being a major player in her own right, who, out of a feeling of goodness and trying to do what's right, but also out of her own will and not just being manipulated, if she plays a major role in stopping them from getting back home, I will like her a lot more as a character. She'd deliver on everything I've really found interesting about her since her debut in Marcy at the Gates, and she'd prove that she's not just this one-dimensional or two-dimensional little sweet ingenue. And she'd probably become my second favorite character in the show after Sasha. But of course, none of this means that she's not going to be manipulated. It can be partly her fault and partly her being manipulated. It's not one or the other. There's a difference between Marcy being very passionate about staying in Amphibia and believing that's what's best for everyone, and not focusing on the negative consequences doing so would have on her friends, a scenario I think is likely, and Marcy going full-on mwahahahahaha supervillain, who's secretly been evil all along, which I think is a very unlikely and boring scenario. This is why, unlike some of my fellow YouTube analysts, I have never called Marcy a villain, nor will I. To be quite frank, I've never called Sasha a villain either. They're flawed people, but they're not these cold-hearted manipulators. They care a lot. They're very compassionate and committed to doing what is right. But they're flawed, very flawed, just like the rest of us. And just like the rest of us, they have to work to overcome these flaws. Marcy would absolutely not help Andreas if she knew that he was in the service of this giant monster of pure evil. A monster that is likely seeking revenge for what happened to its civilization. The same civilization that Frobo belongs to. The same civilization that built the ruins we see early in Season 2. In that sense, Andreas is absolutely manipulating her. He is withholding from her key information. Now, if you really, really want Marcy to be innocent, you could say that maybe King Andreas is only promising her and her friends a few more months in Amphibia, and he is saying to Marcy that they'll get to go back eventually, even though that's not the case, and Marcy believes him, because she's naive. But even though Andreas is absolutely exploiting Marcy's own weaknesses for his own gain, pretending to want something very different from what he actually wants, those weaknesses still exist, and we shouldn't overlook them. If we do like Marcy as a character, like I do, we shouldn't ignore her flaws. We should face those flaws, because they make her a lot more interesting. In the third temple, when they finally have all 3 gems and are about to use those gems to return home, who stops them? Marcy. She acts all cautious and says that, oh no! Did you ever think of what could happen if we open this box? Which isn't wrong exactly, but it's very suspicious that she wants them to take it right to King Andreas, especially since Marcy has never been the cautious sort, and she's never been the sort to defer intellectual authority. No one knows more about this box than her. She's the one who's been studying it in the library all those days, at least as much as Andreas. She's the reason they're still in Amphibia, because she wants them to be in Amphibia. Andreas manipulated her. He was terrible and exploitative toward her, and we shouldn't overlook that. But also, Andreas is not the one who made her want to stay in Amphibia. She wants that for herself. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Amphibia. It's genuinely a great show. I don't know how many of these True Colors episodes I'll have in me, but I'll keep making these analysis episodes of True Colors until it comes out. However long that may be, and who knows at this point. I'm sure it'll be great, and I'm sure it will serve as a fascinating cliffhanger. It's going to be wonderful. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, that I promise you. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.